Sanora Simmons had built an empire most people couldn't even imagine. At only 25, she ran a network of high-priced escorts numbering over 5,000 girls. The media whispered about her in hushed tones, painting her as cold, ruthless, and untouchable. But behind the iron mask of the businesswoman was a young woman who had grown up on the streets, clawed her way out of poverty, and only ever let one man past her defenses, Chance O'Leary. Chance was more than just her benefactor. He was her anchor in a world that constantly tried to pull her under. The towering 300-room hotel he'd bought for her, Chance Heights, was more than a business investment. It was his way of giving her and the girls a future. Every girl was offered education, career training, and the option to leave the trade entirely. Funny enough, most chose to work in the hotel's operations rather than on its darker side. Every year, without fail, Chance would visit. He would check finances, bring her gifts from his travels, silk scarves from Paris, antique hairpins from Kyoto, rare books bound in leather, and take her out for dinner. But that was all. He never let their connection move past friendship, never hinted at what he truly felt. Sanora told herself she didn't care, but the truth was she longed for him. She had waited 7 years for him to make the first move, and now she was done waiting. She packed her bags, left her top executive Shauna in charge, and boarded a flight to see him in his world. When she arrived at his office, she found herself staring at a secretary who clearly recognized her. "Mr. O'Leary is busy," Mrs. Adams said with a knowing smile, "but I'm pretty sure he'll want to see you." She winked, stood up, and left for a bathroom break. Sanora didn't hesitate. She pushed open the door and froze. The first thing she saw was the large photograph of herself on the wall, her holding a single red flower. It was the first picture Chance had ever taken of her. The second thing was his smile. The meeting attendees, including a sharp-tongued blonde, were dismissed in an instant. He locked the door, stepped toward her, and without warning said, "What took you so long, Sanora?" "7 years I've been waiting." "Why now?" Her breath caught. "You were waiting for me? I thought you didn't want me. You came once a year, stayed for a few days, and then disappeared. No touches, no words. I felt alone." "I needed you to need me," he said, his voice low but steady. "I was about to give up and have you dragged to the altar. Will you marry me?" She blinked. "Yes." He smiled faintly, then took her hand and kissed it. Sanora stood in Chance's office with her yes still trembling on her lips like a note that dared not end. The locked door, the quiet, the way his smile softened only for her. These were things she'd imagined on sleepless nights and then banished at dawn. But now it was here. Real. "Then it's settled," Chance said, exhaling as if he'd been holding his breath for years. "We plan a life, not just a wedding. Your relocation, oversight for Chance Heights, a transition team for the girls who want new roles. And," he hesitated, eyes searching hers, "we keep a promise. I won't touch you, not like that, until we say our vows." The old ache flickered across her face. "Is it because of what I told you? About my past?" He shook his head. "No. It's because I want our first everything to live inside a promise, not a memory we can't name." His thumb brushed the back of her hand. "Not possessive. Reverent. And, Sanora, have you been intimate with anyone?" Her gaze fell. She had been hurt before she had ever learned what love meant. That wasn't a confession, it was a scar. He understood. He lifted her hand, pressed his lips to it, and something inside her steadied. They spent the afternoon drafting plans like two generals laying out a kinder world. Each girl at the hotel would have a choice: front desk, housekeeping, leadership, banquet management, culinary certifications, even scholarships. None coerced, all protected. Chance detailed the endowment he'd been building quietly for years. "I started it the week I met you," he admitted. "In case you ever wanted a door that opened anywhere." She laughed, a wet, disbelieving laugh, and threw her arms around him. He didn't deepen the embrace. He simply held her, forehead to her hair, as if memorizing her shape. When she looked up, their breath mingled. He didn't claim her mouth, he only leaned in until their noses touched. A week later, plans in full motion, Sanora returned to Chance Heights to wrap things up with Shauna, her fierce and funny second-in-command. They celebrated with staff in the ballroom that used to host discreet clients and now pulsed with dreams, name tags with new job titles, scholarship letters tucked like secrets into pocket squares, applause that sounded like rain. The parcel arrived the next morning, a plain DVD and a note with an address and a number. The footage was brutal in its coldness. Shauna, bound to a chair, jaw set like a blade. The voice demanded $5 million and promised a safe release. A single line iced Sonora's blood. "No police." She didn't sob, she moved. she called Chance. He answered before the first ring finished. Breathe, he said. I'm coming. By evening his jet cut through night like a decision. He slid into the back of the car where she waited and gathered her in, her composure finally cracking into his shoulder. I can't lose her, Sanora whispered. You won't. His hand rubbed slow circles on her back, steady as a metronome. We'll postpone the wedding. We'll go wherever this trail leads. He lifted her chin. You're not alone anymore. On the tarmac they stood under the roar of engines, wind tearing at her hair, and he kissed her, soft, anchoring, a question answered at last. It was not hunger, it was home. They flew through a night that refused to end, heading for Barbados and a name that would turn the story sideways. A lead detective whose laugh Sanora would recognize before she understood why, and a DNA trace that would pull a thread tied to the very beginning of her life. The Barbados station thrummed with quiet authority, phones murmuring, shoes whispering across polished floors, the low hum of a dozen lives woven into one purpose. When the lead detective stepped out, the air itself seemed to tilt toward her. Good morning, Chance. This way. The woman's voice danced before the smile arrived. In her glass-walled office she shut the door and folded, shockingly, into laughter. Oh God. I have to be professional for 5 minutes. She wiped her eyes. Big brother, how are you? She turned to Sanora. And you must be the woman who finally ended the parade. Sanora blinked. The resemblance hit like sunlight. Same eyes as Chance, same flinty warmth. Sister. Chana O'Leary, she said, offering a hand. Detective superintendent. And terror of lazy paperwork. Introductions collapsed into easy bickering. It was startlingly intimate, watching Chance thaw in the presence of someone who remembered his childhood bruises and victories. Chana briefed them swiftly. The DVD and note had gone to forensics. The station's in-house lab, her project, was already running tests. We're checking for latent prints and trace DNA on the paper edges, she said, tapping a tray. And we're pulling traffic cams around the drop coordinates mentioned. An alert chimed. She scrolled, frowned, then let out a low whistle. No clean prints, but we've got sweat, maybe saliva, on the adhesive. DNA matched to a Trevant Williams. Sonora's chair scraped softly. My father. The words were more breath than sound. I thought he was dead. Chance's hand found hers under the table. Chana took in the quiet storm on Sonora's face and softened. We don't assume guilt from a name on a lab report, she said. We assume a lead. They built a web, called triangulations, financial pings, a local fixer with an unfortunate love of bragging on encrypted forums. Chance called in his private security team, but when they arrived, trim, disciplined, and alert, Chana lifted a brow. They answer to me on island soil, she said without heat. Chance saluted her with 2 fingers and a smile. Night fell again, humid and insistent. In the operations room, a board filled with threads and times began to cohere. A rented van traced to a warehouse near the docks, a short-term phone purchased with cash, a delivery of rope and tape from a hardware store whose clerk remembered, a man with old hurt in his eyes. Sanora studied the map like it could study her back. Why take Shauna? She asked. If this is about money, why not take me? Because you're protected, Chance said. You've had security since the week we met. She stared. Since 7 years? He nodded, unashamed. I loved you then. I love you now. Something inside her unclenched. She moved closer, took his face in both hands and kissed him like punctuation, sure, present, alive. They broke apart breathless and steady. Later, in the hallway, Chana leaned against a vending machine, her ring catching fluorescent light. You're good for him, she told Sanora. He spent a long time building fortresses. You sound like you know something about fortresses, Sanora said, offering the detective a bottled water. Chana smiled without humor. I married one. Good man. Good father. Great commissioner. But sometimes the person who holds your heart isn't the person who signs your lease. She glanced away and for a heartbeat Sanora saw it, a grief with a pulse. The radio crackled. Warehouse Unit C, movement. They were moving before the second syllable landed, lights off, engines low. The sea waited like a dark witness, waves writing unreadable messages on the shore. Inside Unit C, a chair, cut ropes, the lingering presence of fear. And a drive, small, innocuous, taped beneath the table. Chana snapped on gloves, freed it and slid it into a reader. A video flickered, Shauna alive. If you're watching this, she said, eyes fierce, I'm either out or they've moved me. Trevant, he's sick, Sanora. He keeps talking about making you come home. I don't think he means harm. I think he's desperate. The room breathed as one. Chaina pointed to a frame's background detail, peeling paint in a color only one shuttered sugar mill on the island still wore. There, she said. We go now. The abandoned sugar mill rose like a memory, beauty abandoned but not erased. They moved like shadows, Chaina's team fanning wide, Chance and two of his men holding the eastern perimeter. Sanora waited near the vehicles, a vest snug against her ribs, every muscle tuned to the frequency of hope. A whistle. Then a shout. The door gave with a groan, and all at once the air filled with command words wide enough to carry a life. Clear. Left. Hands visible. Down. Then silence. Then Chaina's voice, audible in Sonora's body before it reached her ears, found her. She's okay. Sanora ran. Shauna stood in the doorway, bruised but upright, eyes too bright and stubborn as ever. They folded into each other, each an anchor and a sail. You ruined my mascara, Shauna mumbled into Sonora's hair. I spent all day looking like a hostage who moisturizes. Laughter shook loose the terror that had glued itself to bone. It was short-lived. In the mill's back room sat a man with shoulders like a verdict, features weathered by time and something harsher, regret. Trevant Williams lifted his hands, palms open. I won't run, he said. I called her here. Chaina's team swept him, cuffed him, sat him. Chance stayed back, a quiet engine behind Sonora's steady breath. She stepped forward, heart a drumline. Why Shauna? Because you're guarded, he said, voice rasping like old rope. Because I'm dying, Nori. The nickname fell from his lips like a small, careful stone. Nobody would let me near you if I asked. I didn't know how to make you come. I knew she would call you, and you would bring the man who can open any door. It wasn't justification. It was a confession. Sonora's throat burned. You could have written. You could have asked. I tried. Years ago. He swallowed. They took the letters. Who? The family who paid to keep you hidden. He looked at Chaina then, something like apology in his eyes for making his daughter's life spill into their case. There's a woman who has sent money to Chance Heights for years. Anonymous gifts. Scholarships. I thought she was the one who took you and I was wrong. She was the one who lost you. Chaina's gaze sharpened. Names? Eloise Hart, he said, and the room seemed to inhale. Married to Senator Adrian Hart. The girl who loved me when we were stupid and 17. She gave birth in secret. Her parents told her the baby died. They paid a man to make it true on paper. He held Sonora's eyes with all the ruinable tenderness of a father who had failed and still loved. I spent years looking. I wasn't a good man. Then I was a worse one. But when I saw your picture in a paper, Chance Heights, Education Initiative for Vulnerable Girls, I knew. Your mother's cheekbones. My stare. I knew. Silence worked like a solvent. Chaina nodded to a technician, who quietly took a swab from the rim of Trevant's bottle. She turned to Sanora, gentle but practical. If we can get Ms. Hart here, we can test quickly. It won't tell the whole story, but it can anchor it. Getting Eloise Hart took hours and 2 calls that rang across oceans with the weight of secrets. When she arrived, elegant, composed, eyes too bright, Sanora felt something wordless inside her sit up like a child hearing a lullaby from another room. They swabbed. They waited. The machine sang softly to itself, and in its song was the end of an era. Chaina's mouth softened. Probability greater than 99.9%, she said. Mother and child. Eloise didn't move at first. Then she did what mothers do when words cannot. She reached out, fingertips hovering, asking permission without asking aloud. Sanora stepped into the circle of that hand, and for a moment the world was simple. A forehead to a shoulder, breath to breath, 1,000 birthdays that had never been now crowding into the space of one heartbeat. I thought you were dead, Eloise murmured. I lit a candle every year and pretended it made warmth. She pulled back, cupped Sonora's face lightly. I found you, eventually, and sent what I could where it might help you without hurting you. I was a coward. I am sorry. Sanora didn't forgive and forget. She let the apology land in the middle of them like a table where future meals might be shared. Behind them, Trevant bowed his head. Arrest me, he said to Chaina, voice steady. I took a woman. I threatened harm. Desperate or not, I did it. Chaina nodded. You'll be processed, she said. And then we start telling the truth in court. Chance stepped beside Sanora, his presence a vow. She leaned against him, a sigh loosening her ribs. Everything keeps getting bigger, she whispered. He kissed her temple. Then we make our promise bigger too. The island woke to headlines that sounded like fiction. Secret heiress found. Senator's wife reunited with daughter, kidnapping tied two dying fathers' desperate plea. Underneath the noise, people did what they always do: made breakfast, took kids to school, folded laundry, loved each other imperfectly. Shauna drank broth like it was champagne and refused to rest unless Sanora sat beside her. "Don't you dare plan one single floral arrangement without me," she warned. "I almost got myself murdered. I earned a say in the napkins." "Fine," Sanora said, laughing. "No peonies the size of saucers." Chance and Shayna walked the long curve of the beach after the morning briefing, siblings wrapped in a quiet only blood and history could share. "You're thinking of leaving him," Chance said gently. Shayna watched a wave unzip itself across sand. "He's a good man. He's also not mine." A beat. "I loved someone before him. I thought I was choosing steadiness over storm. But I forgot the storm was named Joy. Do you still love the other man?" She smiled, sat brave. "Some loves end without endings. I won't betray my vows. But I won't hide from my life anymore either. Victor and I will talk. Kindly. Clearly." Chance squeezed her shoulder. "You taught me how to be brave a long time ago. And you taught me how to be stubborn." She nudged him. "Now go marry the woman who makes your sentences shorter and your silences sweet." The wedding was small by design. No sponsors who loved their own names more than the couples. No cameras besides the one Chance set on a tripod beneath a poinciana tree. Eloise sat in the front row, hands folded around a handkerchief that had belonged to her mother. Trevant watched from the second row with two officers nearby and a judge's provisional leniency in his pocket, earned by truth-telling and cooperation. He looked older and oddly lighter, like a man whose punishment had finally started and so might his peace. Shauna walked down the aisle first, queenly in sneakers, a bandage peeking from under her sleeve like a dare. She winked at Sanora. The string quartet slid into a melody that sounded like first mornings. Sonora's dress wasn't a spectacle. It was a statement: clean lines, a back that framed the strength of a woman who had built something out of broken. Eloise fastened a small red silk flower at the waist, a nod to the photograph that had hung in Chance's office and begun the undoing of their distance. "For the girl you were," Eloise whispered. "For the woman you are." When Sanora stepped into the light, Chance forgot how to breathe. He looked like every prayer that had never had words. They met at the small arch hung with bougainvillea, and for a moment neither spoke. The officiant cleared his throat. "We are gathered." "Wait," Chance said, smiling apologetically. He turned to Sanora. "I need to say this while I still remember language. I loved you the first day I saw you choose a future no one had taught you to imagine. I love you more today because you keep choosing even when it costs. I will spend my life building a world where you never have to calculate your safety before your joy." Sonora's eyes shone. "For years I mistook waiting for love. I thought if I was quiet enough, still enough, I would be chosen. Then I learned love is a verb. You loved me with guards I didn't know about, with scholarships you never claimed. I promised to love you with truth, with presence, and with a home we keep unlocking for other people." They exchanged rings. The officiant said the words that make new weather inside old lives. "You may kiss." He did, gently, then with a gathering certainty, the kiss deepening not in heat but in meaning. It was a seal pressed into warm wax, an answer signed in both their names. After, under paper lanterns, toasts rose like kites. Shayna clinked her glass. "To choosing joy without lying to duty," she said, eyes glinting. Shauna lifted her bottle of sparkling water. "To friends who demand better napkins and safer futures." Eloise, trembling and luminous, simply said, "To my daughter," and the room lifted its heart to meet hers. Plans unfurled. Chance Heights restructured as a hospitality school and social enterprise. A foundation named Red Flower granting micro-scholarships to girls leaving exploitation. A partnership with the Islands Academy for hotel management. Safe housing built where the sugar mill had watched the sea. As the night thinned toward its last song, Chance and Sanora stepped into the garden's edge, away from the lights. The ocean kept its own counsel. He pulled her close and they swayed to a rhythm that didn't require a band. She tipped her face up and he kissed her again, slow, smiling, the kind of kiss that could be described 100 ways and still not be the thing itself. "Mrs. O'Leary," he murmured against her lips. "Say it again," she whispered, laughter tucked into the syllables. He did. They didn't hurry the moment. They let it open. Beyond the hedge, life waited, courts and conversations, signatures and second chances. Within the circle of their arms, there was only this: two people who had learned the difference between power and love and chosen the latter on purpose.